Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here for the Iowa Hunger Coalition's monthly meetup for April. I would encourage you to share your name and organization and where you're joining from in the chat, just so we can all kind of get to know each other a little bit better on the call and understand where everyone's coming from. But I'm going to go ahead and get us started. If you're new to the Iowa Hunger Coalition, we always try to kind of go over these two slides. I know it's a bit of a reminder for everyone else, but the Hunger Coalition is a membership-based 501c4 organization. We have a volunteer board of directors, no paid staff members, but we do work with John and Cindy Peterson and their daughter Libby, who represent us up at the Capitol. IHC tries to really be that voice at the Capitol in Des Moines, bringing individuals and organizations together to address food insecurity and build equitable food systems in our state, primarily through advocacy. So this is our mission and guiding principles. This was written 2 summers ago with a lot of input from our members and feedback. But our mission is working to end hunger in Iowa through education, advocacy, and policy change rooted in justice. Our guiding principles are hunger is a policy choice, nutritious food is a human right, and ending hunger requires solidarity, not just charity. And if you want to learn more about those guiding principles, you can go to iowahungercoalition.org. There's a little bit more information right there on our homepage about what we mean when we are saying those things. All right. Well, we are in the thick of it with our state legislative session. So today, we're going to be doing some updates on the state side. On the federal side, want to make sure we leave as much time as we can for any questions that you all may have. So the first, we're going to start with the Iowa Make America Healthy Again Act, or the Iowa MAHA Act. This was a bill that was introduced very early on. It was something that the governor alluded to in her condition of the state address right at the start of session. This is a pretty, wide-reaching bill that does a number of things, make some changes around education standards as well. We have been following this mostly because of the language in there that would codify Iowa's SNAP restriction waiver that has been in place since January. The Iowa MAHA Act did pass the Iowa Senate on April 8 last week, and it is eligible for floor debate in the House. We anticipate that the House will vote on this soon, that they have the votes. There was a negotiation between the Senate and the House to come up with some final amended language. And want to thank you all for reaching out to legislators as they were negotiating. The good news is we got that language removed that would rewrite school nutrition standards. So there was an effort. This was kind of tied to a bill from last year too, that would basically direct the state to come up with our own nutritional guidelines for school breakfast and lunch, and seek to waive the federal guidelines. Obviously, we think that's a bad idea for a number of reasons, and are very happy that that did not make it through into this bill. On the flip side, last month we shared a small victory, was that we got some of that language around the SNAP waiver changed. That has now been changed back at the request of the governor's office. So the good news is we got the school nutrition language removed. The bad news is that SNAP waiver language has been changed back to its original form with an asterisk. There was one change made, and I'm going to go over that now. This is the language of this section that codifies the waiver. I'm not going to read through the whole thing. The yellow highlighted piece, this is the language that was changed back by the governor's request, really this whole subsection A. But it is now changed back to where This is saying that we're going to have only healthy foods as defined by the director or the director's designee for SNAP. And we just feel like that is far too vague and leaves the door open for future changes that the legislature may not agree with. And we just think that is bad policy to have on the books. The green highlighted section here, there was one positive change from the very initial first draft language. This makes it very clear that Iowa would still participate in SNAP, even if we did not get a waiver or a future governor undid the waiver or USDA undid the waiver. We would still participate in SNAP, but as you can see in the red highlighted at the bottom, very clearly we would also not participate in summer EBT. So again, we oppose this language. We do not think that they should be codifying this waiver into law. This is a pilot program. It's meant to be a 2-year demonstration project. The first kind of quarterly report isn't even going to be submitted until May 15. So we do not have any sort of data on whether this is an effective policy. We think it's far too premature to be codifying this. And we especially disagree with tying this to summer EBT. That is threatening to withhold summer nutrition benefits for children if the state does not get its way with the SNAP nutrition waiver, and we just believe that is wrong. So encourage you to contact your representative in the House and ask them to vote no on House File 2676, the Iowa MAHA Act. And like I said, there's a lot in there. Honestly, one of the things that was in there early on that I was like, oh, this is going to be out of there. Over-the-counter ivermectin actually made it through to the final bill. So there's a lot in there that I think probably is bad. There's a few things that I think are probably good efforts too. But we just believe that there's enough bad in there that we should not support it. Iowa's governor could continue a waiver. They do not need to put this language into Iowa code. It's unnecessary. It's redundant. Honestly, it's probably opening them up for a lawsuit, but if they want to do that, so be it. Next, I want to go through our welfare reform updates on those bills. And again, want to thank you all for everything you did to help defeat House File 2716, which was the House Welfare Reform Bill. The fight is not over yet. The Senate version, Senate File 2422, is still alive. And the House and Senate are negotiating on an agreement of a welfare reform bill. And Senate File 2422 is the legislative vehicle they're planning to use. And that is your vocab phrase of the day, legislative vehicle. It just means that that is the bill they have that is still alive in the process that they can use to make changes. Like that MAHA bill, they did a strike and replace, which literally means they take all the language out of the bill and replace it with new language. That's probably what we would see around one of these bills or a significant amendment. So Senate File 2422 is currently eligible for debate in the House, but we don't anticipate that they would take a vote on it until they have an agreed upon amendment with the Senate. And right now it is not clear that they are in agreement. Senate File 2422, if you will remember, not a great bill, but also far less harmful than the House version. It basically just codifies some existing policies for SNAP around immigration eligibility, screening all non-citizen applicants with the SAVE database, and codifying non-citizen changes from HR 1. We don't agree with those changes, but they are not making actual policy change. It is just codifying existing practice. So that's why we believe it's less harmful than the House version. As the House and the Senate negotiate, The House is going to be coming with their ideas of what they would like included, and we know what some of that is from 2716. And so as the House and the Senate negotiate, we want to steer them clear of those bad ideas that were in 2716. And there were actually a few positive ideas that were in 2716. We didn't advocate for it because the bad things were bad enough that they outweighed the good. But the big pieces we want to make sure they do not include in a final welfare reform bill are the WIC eligibility changes around citizenship and the 12-month residency requirements that would make it so anyone applying for public assistance programs in the state would have to wait until they've been here for 12 months to receive SNAP, Medicaid, cash assistance. There's a whole host of reasons why that's bad for survivors of domestic violence who are fleeing, for recent arrivals to the state who are maybe moving here to be closer to family. There's just a whole host of reasons why that's a bad idea. Positive ideas, mostly around the payment error rate and some waivers. I won't get into all that, but our hope is we can steer them toward those more positive ideas. Honestly, best case scenario here with the welfare reform bill is that they run out of time, can't come to an agreement, and the bill never comes up for a vote. That would be great in our book. Any questions on either of those bills before I move into the budget? And I know some of this is kind of dense, so honestly, no stupid questions. If you have the question, someone else probably has it. Well, I'll keep moving into the budget, but please post questions in the chat. We'll have some time at the end too for additional questions. So right now, the legislature is really focused on the budget. And I will be honest, I am not an expert in the budget process. Usually we are dealing a lot more with policy bills. This year, because of all the changes from HR 1, we're paying a lot more attention to the budget. But all that is to say, I'm not the expert on the budget process. This is somewhat newer to me. So if you feel like I'm saying something wrong, please correct me too. So I won't get into all of the mechanics of how the budget process works, but the Senate and the House have slightly different ways of doing this. In the Senate, they've been following the governor's budget proposals and holding subcommittees on the governor's proposed budget, and then are going to be making their own tweaks and changes based on those conversations. The House has been holding off and asking for more information from the governor's agencies and administration on the budget, and are then coming with their own budget proposals. Eventually, again, they'll all need to get on the same page. But that's where the process is. The Senate is a little farther ahead, but they've also said like they're kind of just putting things in place in the process. These might not be the actual bills. Numbers will get moved around, but they want to make sure they're in place so when they have those final budgets, they can vote on them and quickly get out of town. And so they're a little farther ahead. They are going to need to come to an agreement on all of these budgets at some point in the process. And I mean, they are already having these discussions this week. So first, on the Health and Human Services side of the budget, want to provide some updates here. As it relates to our priorities, the House and Senate versions have the same things. They're not the exact same bills at large, but for our priorities, they do include the same things. The big ones are the administrative costs for SNAP and summer EBT. So if you remember from HR 1, there was a big change in how much states had to pay to administer SNAP. That is changing October 1st of this year, which means the budget that our legislators are working on has to take into account that shift in costs. So we need to come up with, as a state, an additional about 10, $11 million in SNAP admin funding just to operate the program status quo as is. Thankfully, the governor did include that in her budget. That budget gap seems like it is going to be met. But I will say, they are paying for this with one-time funds from the surplus. So yes, we are happy this is being filled, but we also need to be aware that this is going to be an issue into the future that is being paid for with one-time funds. And so we'll need to be thinking of sustainable ways to support SNAP, and that probably looks like raising revenues for the state. Also, 1.2 million in administrative funding to operate summer EBT. This is a great return on investment. We have to pay half the admin costs. The feds pay the full cost of benefits. It's about $26 million in benefits that we'll be getting from the federal government, but we do need to pay that 1.2 million in admin funding. But we feel like that is well worth it to bring the $120 in nutrition benefits to 220,000 kids in Iowa this summer. I do see there something in the chat. And Paige had a question about summer EBT funding included in the House side bill. I still have not seen the full budget breakdown, but I did hear that Representative Meyer did say that is included. So verbally, yes, it is in there. But I have not seen the full breakdown. They are voting on that in the Appropriations Committee, probably right now as we speak, in the House. And so we should get a full rundown after that vote takes place to confirm. But yes, we do believe the admin funding is in there for Sunbucks, summer EBT. One thing that is missing from both of these budgets is an appropriation for double up food bucks. This is not included in the House or the Senate bill. Last year, this was included in the House bill. And so I don't want to be too pessimistic, but I don't feel right now that our chances for securing that $1 million double up food bucks appropriation are very high. And we knew going into this session with the tight budget year that it was going to be, knowing that in previous years we've been told we like the program but can't find the money to support it, that this was going to be a really big uphill battle. And that frankly, some of these other asks around the admin funds took higher priority. That being said, we've still been asking. I testified at the Senate budget sub asking for that $1 million for double up food bucks. We will continue to push. But I do just want to note that currently it is not included. That is a great opportunity to reach out to your representatives and ask them to include that. Real quick, the education bills, we're not following a lot here. But I did want to note the governor's bill did include a small amount of money, an additional money for administrative funding for summer EBT. So this is in addition to the 1.2 million for HHS. Summer EBT is kind of administered by HHS and education in partnership. And so it's a little bit of funding for the Department of Education to help administer that. That is not currently in the House education budget. So this is something that we will need to advocate for on the House side to make sure that that is included. It's only about 4% of the total budget for summer EBT admin costs. I don't think it's a make or break thing, but we do want to make sure that the Department of Education has those resources they need to make sure that we are successfully launching summer EBT in the best way possible, in the most seamless way, working with schools and school districts in the department. Agriculture budget, some happy news. The governor's budget does include $200,000 for the Choose Iowa Food Bank Purchasing Program. That is flat funding, but it is good to see that at least it's not a cut. So that is positive. On the House side, some even better news. Not only does it include that $200,000 for food banks, but the House agriculture budget bill includes $200,000 for the Choose Iowa School Purchasing Program. Now, that appropriation is contingent upon the Iowa Farm Act being signed into law, which creates the Choose Iowa School Purchasing Program. The Iowa Farm Act has passed the House. It's in the Senate in the Ways and Means Committee. And so our ask here for the Senate is that we pass the Iowa Farm Act. And not only do we create the Choose Iowa School Purchasing Program, but we've got to make sure we fund it too. And I really want to say, please reach out if you can to specifically Representative Norland Momsen, who is the House Ag Appropriations Chair. I mean, when he was talking through sharing in the subcommittee, he really went out, got creative, looking for funding sources to make this happen. And I think that is a testament to all the hard work done by our advocates, by so many coalition partners, especially the Iowa Food System Coalition, really trying to elevate this Choose Iowa purchasing programs for food banks and schools. The fact that that's in that budget is a win, but we really need to get this across the finish line. And so we're going to be meeting with senators about this and really hoping we can see the Iowa Farm Act passed and making sure that we've got that funding for schools. And we don't want to take away from the food banks either. So making sure that they get that level of funding as well. Finally, this is a little obscure, but there's a separate budget around capital improvements, technology reinvestments. In the governor's bill, there is about $20 million of a budget ask from the Technology Reinvestment Fund for Iowa HHS to upgrade their computer eligibility system for SNAP and cash assistance. Our current computer system for SNAP that Iowa HHS uses is a legacy mainframe system. It's older than I am. Green text on a black screen, no mouse, tabbing through. Frankly, I'm amazed that our payment error rate is as low as it is with how dated our technology is. And that makes it a lot harder for our agency to operate efficiently and in a timely manner to process those applications. So we do support this $20 million ask for Iowa HHS to upgrade their computer system for SNAP and cash assistance. It's unclear. I don't think I've seen a House bill on that side. If someone else has seen one, please post it in the chat. I checked again this morning. I don't think there's been anything, but we hope that that will be included in the House bill as well. And then finally, before I open it up for more questions about state legislative session, I've had a few people asking me in recent days, when do you think the session is going to end? So a little bit of context. Next Tuesday, April 20, is the 100th day of the legislative session, and that is when our state representatives and senators stop getting paid their per diem. And I want to add a quick little fun fact here about the per diem. So that's an amount of money that our legislators get paid daily in addition to their $25,000 salary. For most legislators, their per diem is higher than the average monthly SNAP benefit for individuals in Iowa. $200 is most legislators per diem. Polk County legislators don't get quite as much. They get 150 every day, but our legislators get $80 a day for meals and incidentals. And the average SNAP benefit, monthly SNAP benefit in Iowa is 167, less than $6 a day. The absolute maximum that people can get for their SNAP, if they are literally have no income at less than that 0% of the poverty level, the absolute most that individuals can get through SNAP is less than $10 a day. I just want to point out that our legislators get $80 a day for meals and incidentals. I just want to note that. And I also want to say here, it's the 100th day. I learned something new just a few days ago, or maybe it was last week. 100 days is the length of our legislative session in even years, and in odd years, it's 110 days, which is the first year of the General Assembly. So we are in our second year of the General Assembly. And so there's 100 days, just a little bit more trivia that you probably didn't care about and won't remember. Honestly, your guess is as good as mine as to when the legislature will adjourn. They have a little Latin term for this, sine die. I'm probably saying that wrong. That's when they officially adjourn. But they will stop getting paid next Tuesday. We don't know how quickly it will take for them to officially adjourn. But they are doing retirement speeches, and there have been some resolutions around retirement. It seems like some of this budget stuff is moving. It's an election year. They do want to get out of there, but they still have some big issues that they need to get in agreement on. So I am not going to take any guesses. Any questions for myself? I know Paige is on as well. Anyone else can hop in and share anything they've heard or have questions about.
Luke, can you remind me the total number of summer EBT funds that got brought in? Is it 29.9 million? I feel like was the last time I had that number, but then I wasn't sure if that has been
Yeah,
updated more recently.
I am doing a quick calculation. So the state has said this time around, they estimate the eligible population is 220,000 kids, which is less than the 245,000 that they said 2 years ago. Now, the reasons there are we've seen SNAP enrollment decline. And so there are less kids who will be directly eligible through SNAP. We've also seen our free and reduced meal rates kind of maintain steady, but dip a little bit. And so I think that's probably why. If you use that 220,000 number, it's 26.4 million in benefits. How the cost of summer EBT this year compares to the cost of Healthy Kids Iowa last year, boy, would I love to know the full accounting breakdown. But it is going to cost the state $1.2 million, about 1,250,000, just shy of that. That's less than they had said in previous estimations, which is good. They're finding some cost savings. We really don't know how much it cost everyone altogether to operate Healthy Kids Iowa, but it is going to cost less, no doubt, because we know that the state's costs alone for Healthy Kids Iowa were much more than 1.2 million. And then there were all the uncompensated costs from food banks and pantries. Why can I think I've just put Healthy Kids Iowa so far out of my mind that I'm not remembering. Was it $9 million that the state had to administer Healthy Kids Iowa?
Just a little over. I think it was like 9.1.
Yes. So, I mean, it didn't cost the state anything since those were federal funds. So technically it didn't cost the state anything to run Healthy Kids Iowa. They got those funds federally, but it certainly cost food banks and pantries money to stand up the program.
Right. And I think as I was doing some number crunching with Luke, I think we estimated, and this was just based on like the numbers that we had that were made available to us in terms of what went to pantries for direct food purchases and then what was spent on admin costs. It seemed like about 1.3 was spent on admin costs out of that 9.1. But then additionally, anecdotally from food banks across the state, estimates I heard from folks working in those food banks were anywhere from like 500,000 to 750,000 that the food banks themselves used of their own money just to stand up the program because they were not made whole by what was made available in terms of administrative funds. So that would seem to point to this it being more costly administratively than summer EBT, and to bring in so many more, such a larger pool of funds with summer EBT 26.4 million instead of, you know, 7.7-ish in actual food purchases for Healthy Kids Iowa.
Yeah, thank you, Paige. Yeah. I mean, just comparing that 1.3 in admin costs for Healthy Kids Iowa versus the projected 1.2 for summer EBT, it's going to cost less money to run summer EBT, and it is going to reach like 5 times as many kids. So this is why we have been advocating for summer EBT all along and are so grateful that the state is doing it. I believe they met actually that training might be today. I believe they're doing a training for school districts on summer EBT. Um, the Department of Education is so, and again, seeing that they have these admin funds, it really looks like they are going to be doing it this summer and going forward, and we are super grateful and thank you all for all the advocacy you did for 2+ years on that. All right, well, I'm going to hop back in real quick for some federal updates. There's only a few slides, and then we can open it up for any more questions. Oh, real quick. I did have a couple other state updates. I just wanted to share the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities has this awesome new tool out. I wrote Snap twice there. That should not be Snap Tracker. It's the state Snap Tracker. But they have, and the link is here. Maybe someone can post that in the chat. If you go to the homepage, it's there. But they are monitoring SNAP enrollment trends nationwide. As you know, following HR1, we have been sharing some of this data too in our previous calls just on the Iowa side, but I want to share this tool because I think it's a super powerful tool. It's helpful to see the Iowa data. It's also helpful to see the comparisons with other states. You will notice Arizona is bright red. There was some additional reporting on Arizona too from ProPublica. The Arizona story is basically that after HR1, their state agency decided they were going to undo broad-based categorical eligibility. Didn't consult with advocates, didn't frankly, I think, know really what they were getting themselves into. And Arizona started seeing their enrollment plummet. I bring that up because we have heard some talk on the federal level about undoing broad-based categorical eligibility, which would kick about 22,000 Iowans off of SNAP. What they are seeing in Arizona may be coming our way. depending on changes at the federal level. And honestly, it's something we were bracing to potentially see at the state level, because we have seen bills before in our legislature to eliminate broad-based categorical eligibility. Another cool feature of this tool is that there is an unemployment rate, a graph as well. So you can kind of see, yes, people are coming off SNAP. It's not that suddenly our unemployment rate is also going down and people are finding jobs. No, they are not finding employment. They are just losing access to benefits, leaving them worse off than before, which is exactly what we were saying during the reconciliation fight last summer. But be sure to check that out. Also, want to be sure to mention IHC's SNAP map. This is something we've been bringing up. You can go back to 2003. Don't quote me on a date, but I have an eventual update that will go back. Right now, I'm at 1985. But you can really see those historical trends. And this is the way we are able to make the case and say, Iowa is currently at a 17-year low for SNAP enrollment. So please use that CBPP tool. Please use the SNAP map. You can pull up county level data, and it's really helpful, I think, to understand just the trends of what we're seeing in the state of Iowa. I will also say in a few days, the March numbers will be out. We have really not seen the biggest brunt of the impact from HR1 yet. I think the 7% drop that Iowa has seen from July, some of that is due to changes from HR1. Certainly refugees, other humanitarian immigrants losing access had an effect. We saw an enrollment decline during the shutdown as people were not applying. But those work reporting requirements are going to start hitting in the March numbers. And so we don't know exactly what that's going to look like yet, but we could see a big dip in March, and that will only continue over the next 6 to 12 months as people face those new requirements as they recertify for benefits. All right, now I'll get into the federal updates, and I kind of already gave you a preview to a couple of these slides. So first, Reconciliation Watch. Bit of a review, HR1, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that was passed last summer through the budget reconciliation process. And this is a process that Congress can use. They can only use it like once or maybe twice a fiscal year. I'm still not exactly sure about how that all works. But it's a process that they can use in Congress to pass something in the Senate with a simple majority, which means 50 votes in the Senate right now for Republicans, with the vice president breaking the tie. Usually for most bills, you'd have to deal with the Senate filibuster, and that would require 60 votes. But the reconciliation process is a way to pass things in the Senate, avoiding the Senate filibuster. And we have heard that they are going to use the reconciliation process to pass an additional funding package for ICE. And I mean, it's more that we've heard they've come to an agreement with the House to break some of the logjam on this DHS funding bill, promising that they are going to have a reconciliation package. And that would fund ICE going forward and potentially the war in Iran, which are not exactly the most popular things right now in the United States. So what will actually be included in that reconciliation and how it will be paid for is, we are not sure. Congress is not sure. This is a huge subject of debate. There is a lot of things in the news right now. Senate Majority Leader John Thune is calling for a skinny bill. I think he was quoted yesterday as like calling it an anorexic bill, which I shouldn't probably use that language because not great, but and wants it very narrow to just this ICE funding package and some other things around DHS. But then you have members in the House who are pushing for much bigger additional priorities, trying to tie in the SAVE Act, and additional Medicaid cuts and potential pay-fors, like, that's basically code name for cuts, is how are we going to pay for this? So this is all still swirling. Like, we do not know where this is going to land. Certainly Thune wants a skinny bill. I honestly, for what they're trying to do in a re-election year, that's probably a good call on their end, rather than try to throw in a bunch of other things. But we'll just have to wait and see. I mentioned broad-based categorical eligibility. There has been a proposed rule change regarding broad-based categorical eligibility. We have heard in drafting mode for months. So that rule change could be coming, but it's possible they could be holding off on this rule change to save that as a potential pay for in reconciliation. So eliminating BBCE would kick over 22,000 Iowans off SNAP, half of them children and seniors. This would change our income eligibility for SNAP in Iowa from 160% of the federal poverty level to 130%. By definition, this would remove households with earned income. By definition, these are households who are, earning an income through work. And so this would be very bad. Whether it's a rule change or in reconciliation, this was attempted during the first Trump administration. It got held up in a court battle. That could happen again. If they do it through a rule change, they don't get to say that that saves any money. But if they save this for reconciliation, then they get to use it as a pay for, saying, we're going to save all this money kicking people off SNAP. And then maybe we can use that for our, bombs for the war in Iran. So that is some of the context there. And yeah, thank you, Paige, for adding that in around the huge impact that eliminating BBCE would have, not just in the state of Iowa. And then there's the Farm Bill. You haven't heard much from us on the Farm Bill, and most of that is just because the state legislative session has been so busy. But there has been movement on a Farm Bill in the House. The U.S. House Agriculture Committee held a markup vote on their Farm Bill on March 5. It did pass with some Democrats supporting it as well. I will say a lot of Democrats and a lot of national hunger groups were pushing for a no vote, not because it did anything to cut SNAP more, but they felt that those cuts from last year should be undone, and that the reconciliation process was used to avoid bipartisan consensus, which is how we've built our farm bills. And so if they are going to do a bipartisan farm bill, that is going to require undoing some of those cuts. Not all. I think the reason that they have been very reasonable with their requests, and some of it is just asking for a delay. There are some positive pieces too, I will say, around card security and chip technology. But one of the big asks was an effort to delay the implementation of the cost sharing provisions of HR 1 to 2030 to put all states on an even playing field. That was not included. There may be a floor vote in the House in late April. I think the future's a lot more unclear in the Senate because it would take 60 votes, because it's not clear that they would be able to get a bipartisan farm bill. And so just wanted to add that. You haven't really heard too much from us. If there is time to take some key actions in the future on this, we will be sure to let you know. Okay, so with that, I am going to stop sharing and open it up for any questions or any discussion in our last 15 minutes. We can also just you can all have 15 minutes back of your morning too, if there are no questions.